Yeah. Okay. So yeah, apparently we should somewhere. I don't know how you find out where. If anyone knows, that would be great.
It's being recorded somewhere.
Let me, if I can get it to work. If you look in the chat panel on the right, there's a YouTube link there, and I'll post it on page for the event as well. So
we're back.
We're back. So anything we need to be through for Don, given I suspect he's going to be the person doing most of the talking. So work out whether Don's actually managed to join us yet. So yeah, sorry about the chaotic entry to those of you who have just made it, but so
We're back.
We're back. So okay.
Are we full again, do you think?
Okay. The document as well, that's the other thing I wanted to check. Can anyone hear me at all?
Yes, we can hear you.
Don, just
That's good.
post the link again and to join.
Okay. It's on the event page. Let me, if I can, send it to him direct. The document as well, that's the other thing I wanted to check. Okay, delayed echoes, which hopefully won't get away too much. So, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The only thing I'm slightly worried by is that I've got a feeling that Don may not be able to get in because we've already got 10 people in the Hangout. Is there anyone who's willing to drop out and send sort of questions by text and things? Okay, so Robin's dropped out to watch on YouTube. And I'll try and keep it on the chat, on the event page as well. And hopefully Don should be able to get in at this point. By YouTube. Hi, Don.
Hey. We lost about 4 people.
Well, we've got 3 viewers on YouTube, so
yeah, I think we got to get.
If
you can send them the link, that'd be great, because they're just listening at the moment.
So yeah, I don't know.
Could you email that link around to everyone then, Michael?
I can send the email out as well. Yep. Let me. I'm not sure everyone's going to be able to see be able to join in. So yeah, apologies for the disastrous start. Partly was working and lost my internet connection at bang on 8 o'clock. So Hangout. So those of you who are actually here, can you see the Google Docs document that I've got up for the
Yep.
on the screen?
Yep. This is the goals remit and other possible activities. Yep.
People could see it, but yeah. So I don't know if people were sort of happy with the very vague agenda that I managed to put together this afternoon. Starting point, and then we can sort of start going through from there. But I thought it'd probably be good if Don, you're willing to give us a sort of brief update. I think most of us are probably aware, but just on what's changed since we put the docu.
Oh,
we can do.
It's been a long time. There's been so many great things that have happened. I mean, I on the F# Software Foundation side of things. I mean, I honestly am being just amazed how well things have been going for F# sort of open source cross-platform engineering. And from the Microsoft perspective, I think I can speak for the Visual F# team to say that you know, we or the F# Software Foundation really set a direction for F#, which is a positive one, and the Microsoft really saw that was compatible with both orthogonal and compatible with being part of Visual Studio as well, and being part of the product. That Xamarin also embraced what we're doing, what the Software Foundation is doing, and it's really just a fantastic combination of things coming together over the last year. And I think it would be good just to go through the doc and to see how things have changed from when we first got together to write this July last year. So Michael, does that sound good? Just general framing comments?
Yeah, I mean I think that's yeah, roughly what I was thinking of, and yeah, we might as well have a quick look. So looks like Don's in there as well. So as I understand it, as this obviously when it's put together, there wasn't any option sort of contributions going back into the Microsoft repositories directly, whereas obviously that's changed. So we've got remit bit at the top, and I suppose first question is this what people think that we you know that they're members of the group to help out with? We've sort of got, you know, helping out with the editing experience, the compiler and core services, and trying to promote a sort of not core library as such, but a sort of shared library.
Yeah, and to recap on where we were last year, I mean, well, I think an important framing thing for this particular group of people is that it's certainly not an exclusive group of people. It's more that the core engineering group is sort of people who want to keep an eye on F# and its open engineering culture and to promote it and help organize and so on. We know there's so many other people contributing and following these goals and the general remit on the sort of open engineering side of things. So yeah, non-exclusive, and definitely we should be very thankful for the huge range of contributions from people who don't particularly associate with this group. But so other people, so maybe just read out the goals: to organize, promote, and contribute to work on F#'s core tooling to make development pain-free and fully featured, enable it on new platforms, and host F# code in new ways. So if we go over I'm going to dig into a bit more detail with respect to those goals. I'm looking back over the last 12 months. F# development on OS X and Linux is by no means pain-free. It's probably not even pain-free on Windows as well. But we, compared to where we were last year on both OS X and Linux, things have just progressed enormously. Fully featured, I think that's something we struggle with in a cross-platform setting. But again, so many features have lit up in a cross-platform setting. We look at a library like F#.data, which works well across platforms now and is tested across platforms, and that's a great feature that's come onto the cross-platform setting. enable it on new platforms. We've got F# enabled on Android and iOS. That's core on OS X and Linux as well, Linux packages. We've got F#. Probably some of the. I haven't been particularly keeping an eye on some of the other platforms. Like I've seen messages about Raspberry Pi or other platforms coming up, but we see that F# is making its way to towards a sort of ubiquity that a language needs. Language adoption is really driven by ubiquity a lot, especially on these platforms. And to host F# code in new ways. I mean, we've seen some Tsunami tools, of course. We also see the F# compiler service and being used in a lot of different interesting ways. So I think those goals we're definitely all making progress on. And has anyone got any comments about the goals that we have, or things you think the core engineering group should or shouldn't be doing, or is this the right sort of statement of high-level goals? Anyone want to comment on that at all? Before we move on?
I mean, I know...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know one of the discussions that came up last year was sort of a bit of discussion to actually do these things as a group, and I think that's still partly part of the open discussion, but I think this is more the fact that there are individuals who happen to be partners, and there are individuals outside as well, so it's more the kind of promoting, it seems, that this group would be doing rather than necessarily organising work. Sorry, I was interrupting someone else though. Robin, I think you had something to...
Yeah, well, I just wanted to comment on the hosting F# code and like the package ecosystem. I think there could be a lot done to make using F# easier on like OS X and Linux, particularly by if you look at a lot of other popular like languages with strong open source ecosystems, that often is because they have a very good package manager that enables people to really share code very, very easily. And I think NuGet is good, or Nugget, however you say it, but I'm not sure that it's quite there. It's not as smooth as it could be, because it's mainly bundled into the IDEs and expected to be used like that. So I don't know if this is the right time to talk about that, but that's just something that I think would be good to discuss.
It's exactly the right time. I think I'd really like, you're using F# all the time on OS X and Linux, right? I'd really like to hear what the pain points are. So do you want to dig into that a bit more? Is it what sucks? Is it the IDE integration, or is it the NuGet? Well, you're using Emacs, I know. Is it the NuGet command line experience is just a disaster, or?
Well, so one problem is that it's not necessarily straightforward to just. There's not a blessed way to have NuGet installed and just pull a package down very, very quickly.
So is NuGet in the mono packages yet? In the Linux packages?
No.
Ah.
It's in the latest ones from Xamarin that are in their repo. They've just been populating that recently. That now has it, but that's going to take a long time to get into Debian or anything like that.
I see.
And they're also packaging F# in that repository, which is a very positive step.
They're doing Linux packaging.
Yes, yeah, they have a Linux package for all of latest mono, F# and NuGet, which is great. That's the kind of thing that we need, so that people just have it there ready to go.
I see.
Robin, have you had a look at Kit's project that Stefan Falkman's trying to put together? Because like you, I don't do it sort of as my day job, but I do some home development with F# on Linux, and the whole sort of package is painful.
Yeah, I think
sort of conceptually as well as. Yeah, I mean, something like Packet, but sort of .NET in general, package management, I think would be an awesome thing for the community to drive forward, because it's such a massive pain point in the .NET yeah, I think Richard's just posted a link to that in the
chat
room.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I have been looking at Packet, and I think it's a really good idea. What I'm not sure about is exactly where it's going to end up. I need to try to talk to Stefan a bit more about this. So I've been commenting on a few of the issues to try and get an idea of where it's going, how to make it as easy as possible to install for Linux users, and that kind of thing. And I think it is going. It's taking inspiration from the Ruby bundle tool, and that's a good place to go, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I must admit, conceptually, it looks better to then just to sort of keep people as well. Ryan Riley, who hasn't managed to sort of get one of the slots in the Hangout, he's saying that the core CLR and sort of ASP.NET vNext start interesting in terms of the targeting multiple platforms as well.
Yeah.
I must admit, I haven't looked at it too much, so I can't really comment too much on that.
Yeah, so I think there's two. I mean, often in this sort of yearly perspective, we it's good to look at the big picture issues, I think. And so the two encouraging things I see, which are worth calling out. One is that Xamarin seem to be heading in a direction where they want to enable a very consistent mono-based development experience across both Linux and OS X. So previously they haven't done Linux packages, or not for a long time, and looking at what they're doing, they seems they want to do the same bundling, the same development experience you get with the Mono SDK. They want to make that available on Linux as well, and that's with all the F# bundling and NuGet and ReactiveX and everything that comes with that, reactive extensions or whatever, everything they bundle just comes ready, which is great. That's actually good, very good news in a sense, because otherwise we're just waiting years and years for these things to get into the Debian packages. The other thing was mentioned is the move from ASP.NET to be a cross-platform framework, and it's just so good to see those things going in the right direction from the perspective of the core engineering group.
So, I mean, in terms of sort of what we're trying to collect in terms of high-level goals for the year, I mean, do people feel that
I've just
they're sort of missing?
I've added package management as a section into the doc just before libraries and frameworks. I listed out a couple of one current pain point, which which we just touched on. So, which Robin mentioned, NuGet is not distributed and available on Linux. If people have time to list out their other, or Robin, if you want to flesh that out a bit more about what are the pain points compared to the smooth experience you're feeling you get with Clojure or Haskell or Camel or whatever else. I think I haven't used those package systems recently on Linux for those kind of languages, and I've seen the Ruby one, I guess. I've seen how smooth it is.
The other issue is that it's just because NuGet is so tied into MS Build, and MS Build has its good points, but it's also it's not really friendly to being edited by hand. And the moment you step out of Visual Studio, you're editing it by hand, and that's not something that someone who's coming to it for the first time is probably going to want to do. So Packet is letting you just specify a simple list with versions of packages that you want, and it can just pull those down straight away possibly from multiple sources, so it's not necessarily tied to NuGet.com. So that's a much smoother experience for someone that hasn't used NuGet before. They're not going to be able to just create a bunch of XML out of nothing. But putting a few package names in a text file is quite doable.
Yeah, the packages.config doesn't worry me too much, but the fact that NuGet has special support built in for sort of solution files, and also it has this sort of magic. When you use it from Visual Studio, it adds things into your solution file and things like that. That's all pretty painful from the perspective of anyone who's not using a fully featured IDE.
Yeah, so for the F-sharp autocomplete project, if you run NuGet restore on the solution file, it does pull down the packages, so that's fine. You can do everything you need from the command line, so I'm reasonably happy with that. But I'm not quite sure whether that's the current blessed way, if that's what Visual Studio, if it would produce a packages.config that would work with that. I don't know, and I don't know. I wouldn't be able to easily reproduce that in 10 minutes if I was just creating a new project. I'd have to go digging around in old files.
Yeah.
It seems to me like it might help if we divorced a little bit from the tooling that's not F-sharp. So like, I really like, I've been using the F-sharp notebook that we built here quite a bit. I really like how we can define which NuGet packages with as specific versioning as we like inside the scripts themselves. So there's no external file at all. It's just part of the script. And that seems to be how it should be to me, because essentially what's being defined, like the dependencies are actually in the script on what's in the API.
Yeah, that's the same approach that was used by Tsunami, right? And they were to great effect.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could standardize on something that F-sharp Interactive could understand and then bake in that support. I'd really like that, because right now, you know, we tried to make our syntax similar to Tsunami's, but it's, I think, slightly different.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I think you should at this stage focus on creating something that the F-sharp Interactive could copy if it did put in NuGet support. So just focus on making something that's good, and then it's likely to be copied. If we put in sort of NuGet retrieve stuff into the Xamarin Studio or F-sharp Interactive kind of tooling.
A lot of data science people are used to that too. They in R, you just type in your REPL what packages you want, and it goes and gets them.
Okay. I think that would be a big step, because it's not again, it's not then tied to Visual Studio. If FSI can do that for you, and then really you can make a script that is completely standalone. It's just got one single text file, and someone can expect to download it and run it without having to worry about where I'm going to get these packages from, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Would this be the kind of thing that would be good to kind of take into a smaller group later? I mean, I think we're all agreed there is a big pain point around package management for F-sharp and .NET, and not worth trying to fully hash out how we're going to solve it or how we'd like to solve it just at the moment. Is that okay with everyone as a...
Yeah, totally. I think it's good to have some ideas about how we can make progress, and so certainly what I'm hearing, the experience of enabling the core REPL with the get package experience would hit that nail on the head in some ways. Of course, doesn't solve it for project-based solutions, so it's not all easy. And we don't, and I'm a bit loath to see all of the logic that sort of Visual Studio uses to integrate NuGet packages suddenly incorporated into F-sharp Interactive.
Oh yeah, that's probably going too far.
Yeah, so tricky business. Yeah, but definitely, it's good to hear what the pain points are. Yeah. Okay.
Just one last thing. I think on that topic, we really need to hear what Stefan Borkman has in mind, because he's done a lot of work on Packet, and he's probably got some good ideas, and so it'd be great to hear what he has in mind.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see some people doing more bolder experiments with changing how F-sharp Interactive does things. I'd like to see some pull requests or some hacks on the open source F-sharp Interactive to make it do what you want. And
actually, you just reminded me. There's an outstanding issue on F-sharp Interactive, which is that hashar doesn't actually behave the same way on Mono that it does on .NET.
Right, I've seen that.
That's absolutely terrible.
I see. Is this correct? Yes, I've seen that issue on the F#, and I've seen that people need to put the extra #I into search.
Yeah, and it's not 100% reliable even then.
Right.
So, for example, I have like quite a big script on that on Windows. I can just Control A, Alt Enter, send the whole lot. Runs in one go. On Linux, I can do it, but I have to do it twice. The first time it fails to find the DLLs.
Yes,
The second time around it succeeds.
Yeah, I've seen that issue, and it does seem to be an issue that has to be fixed in the GitHub F# repository. And yeah, it would be great to make progress on that. Okay, so that's so there's a consistency thing in.
Yeah, that's issue 201 on. Sorry, 251. But yeah, maybe that's too specific. No.
Well, I think that's a sort of core niggling issue. I'm just writing again these pain points into the document, so that word #R is not consistent.
Quick question on the packages, package retrieval. Is the Ruby packaging mechanism similar to Node.js and Bower? Did anyone hear that?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with.
Heard it. I don't know if people know the answer.
Okay. I've played around with those a bit, and they're just really clean and elegant. Maybe Stephen Borkman's stuff is going to be really clean and elegant as well. And it's just, multiple platform support and all that. It's just, I don't know. I'm not very impressed with NuGet. That's all I can say.
Yeah, but the problem here, I mean, we'd all trust if it's Stefan. I mean, we all would trust him just to redesign the whole package management system for all of .NET or for all of the .NET ecosystem. And if that was magically adopted, then we would. We all know the world would be a much better place. So the question is really just about the usual network effects of what's everybody using, and certainly at the moment, everyone's using NuGet, and we can't easily just shift off that. Although Packet does have NuGet support as well, of course.
Yeah, I think that's very important. But yeah. I also think there is some, like, to some extent, if you build it, they will come. If it's like Emacs didn't have any package management until recently, and now there's thousands and thousands of packages that you can install with a single, a few awkward key presses, and that's just come because they made it so easy that you can just you can just make a GitHub repository a package. So I'm not saying we should do exactly that, but I'm just saying if it's easy enough, I think it'll take off. But NuGet support is obviously important.
Yeah. Okay. So it's an area which obviously needs work, and where people are working, and we've got to hope that things converge to converge nicely. I will remind people that there is this cross-platform guide on fsharp.org, which lists things like recommendations for package management and so on. I think it'd be great if people could contribute to that. And for instance, if Packet comes together as a really the sort of the approach we would recommend in scaffolding and all the other places, then this would be great to keep that cross-platform guide up to date. And yeah, so please contribute to that.
I suppose would we consider sort of changing the major F# open source projects over to using Packet as it becomes more stable as a group we want to actively drive the adoption of?
Yeah, well, I think I mean, to some extent, Stefan may well just drive an adoption cycle, and we could well then join in at some point. So I don't think we don't have to feel obliged to shift, use the core repositories to shift the whole ecosystem. But if things are looking good, we should think about doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on packaging.
I have something positive to report. The Travis, we use Travis continuous integration for the testing. So I tried to I've been looking at getting it into Travis mainline so that it's C# and F# are properly supported
Super.
on Linux.
I'm just starting a section on continuous integration. I just to mention it as of one of in the remitting goals. But continue, Robin.
Yeah, so I just poked the conversation with a view to seeing what needed to be done, and then someone else got very excited about it and started prototyping a pull request, and then the Xamarin packages for Linux appeared at around the same time, so it's all coming together very nicely. So I think we should hopefully have like actual language F# support in Travis soon for Linux, which would be very nice. And the more packages that we can get using that, the better, because maybe not all of us develop on Linux. Well, the vast majority, I'm sure, use Windows. But if your packages can be kept compiling on Linux under Mono, that's a great step, even if people are not necessarily developing on Linux. It can just help to prevent breakage and make things smoother for people coming from these other operating systems.
You know, it's a shame it's so difficult to set up parallel builds for like Linux and Mac and Windows, because if it was easy, I'm sure everyone would just do it, and you would see the continuous integration.
On that one
works.
Yeah, I've cheated on that one slightly. It's actually fairly easy to set up a Linux CI build on Travis, open source build for Windows. Getting sort of something a bit more combined is hard work. That we do have these CI solutions out there that you can actually test your open source packages on both environments and get sort of failed build reports if you work on one or the other.
I think Travis and to some extent AppBay has been absolutely critical in keeping F# at a really and the F# core repositories at a good, strong base level. It's being widely used. It's great to see it in most of the F# core repositories, and I think we've made huge progress on that since last year. And thank you to I don't know who started that in the F# community, but it's been great to see. It might have been Fake originally.
Yeah, I second that. It's extremely useful.
Yeah, I mean, I had an intern. I'll share an anecdote on that. An intern over the summer working on the DBBD type provider, and put it up as an example in DFS projects. And when I spent maybe half an hour with him showing how to enable a Travis build, and he had never, ever used F# on Linux or OS X. And the fact his code was being automatically compiled and tested on those platforms without him ever having to install those operating systems. He was really impressed by that. He just had no idea that was possible, and so even if you're not using Linux, F# on Linux, even if you're not using it on OS X, you can still get your code compiled and tested for free automatically using Travis. So we should really be continually reminding people about that. You get these great projects like Vulpes, for example, the one that uses the GPU Decision Forest machine learning project by Rob Linden, and there is a Travis build for that. It's failing at the moment, but if you can shift people who are doing great stuff with F# on Windows and say, hey, you can be cross-platform as well. Here's how you do it, and I think that's helps take the community in the right direction.
Maybe like a blog post or something on how to get that going really fast could help the community a lot. I actually am surprised because I didn't know Travis did both Mac and Linux.
Yeah, if you put Objective-C as the language, it does Mac.
Okay, currently they're oversubscribed on Mac, so what Don said is true, but unfortunately we can't use both Mac and Linux for one project at the moment. So hopefully that'll become a reality soon. But I haven't tried using it for Windows testing. It'd be great if it could run. I know that we can use Travis for Linux or OS X and then AppFair for Windows. So that gives you good coverage. But yeah, I'd be happy to write a blog post about it.
Yeah, what would be great? We have this. Thomas set up this F# Foundation Core Engineering Group blog. I'll just write out the URL for. Just digging out the URL for where to contribute to that, because you can just send a pull request with a new blog entry, and then the blog entry would go out under the name of this group. And I think that's a good brand to build up over time. We don't need a lot of blogs or anything, but I think it's would be it adds an extra dimension, which is valuable. So let's just find here we are. Yeah, it's really simple. You just add a new .md file, markdown file, into a directory called posts. So I'll just have you guys have got the document there. I'll just in the section on CI, I listed out the URL to contribute to that. I'll post it into the session as well. Chat. And my understanding is if that pull request gets accepted and the markdown goes in, then it'll just appear as a blog entry on the front page roller and everything.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And to remind everyone where the web page actually is, so this group is currently using sharp.github.io as its home. Okay, so that's continuous integration. Anyone want to add more on that?
If we're looking at sort of the compiler and core services side of things, obviously the sort of flow of pull requests going into the Visual F# team at the moment, and that seems to be working pretty well as far as I can make out. The only thing I was wondering whether, as a group, with the blog and maybe building it up a bit, is it worth having some ideas floating around for how we can help get people involved who haven't sort of got that much contact with, that much experience with the compiler, which is just sort of something I was wondering about. I know there's a couple of people I've spoken to at work who sort of involved but are quite scared of actually just sort of diving into the compiler source code.
Yeah.
It's not too late to send them to the F# tutorials.
Yep, that's right. Tutorials in New York. I'll be giving a compiler overview, both for the compilers, probably on the compiler service component. I thought I'd do parts on that, and I'd also give some on the core, on the internals of the compiler. But I think following if part of the problems with Codeplex, right? If it was easier to follow what's happening on Codeplex, then people would naturally integrate by watching for a while and code reviewing and starting to fix some simple bugs and so on. Codeplex makes things tough because you follow the RSS feed and it's not even a particularly good RSS feed of what's going on the site and this sort of thing. So that's the way it should happen, I think. I think from the perspective of this group, sort of the remit of the group, again thinking about sort of cross-platform and broadening sort of breadth kind of issues. In many ways, the Visual F# team have a remit that they have to make the whole thing easy to get involved with. Okay, that we can help as much as possible, help improve any simplifications you can make on like how to build it, how to test it. I know there's a pull request in to use fake, and the Visual F# team are pretty positive about that. Anything you can do to improve it is good. I think it's not yet a cross-platform development experience on the core compiler and tooling, right? You can contribute to the F# repository, but you can't even compile the Visual F# repository on Linux and Mac. So I know the Visual F# team would welcome contributions to align the two repositories, and if anyone wants to sort of help with that, that would be fantastic.
So, sorry, Don, just to clarify there, are you suggesting basically looking at things that are currently in the fsharp.org but not in...
Yeah,
effectively just cleaning up those pull requests?
Just taking the diffs between the two and pushing them through as pull requests back into the Visual F# repository. The Visual F# repository gets integrated into the F# into the GitHub one regularly, so that direction is okay. It's just there's some extra diffs in the F# repository, which should go back. But it's the particular. I mean, you can just do a diff between the two trees. You can see the diff if you need to.
So would they? Okay,
Yep.
A few questions. They said at one point, I think, that they were thinking about moving to GitHub.
Yeah, its plan of record is to move to GitHub. They've got a lot of other things they need to do first. It's
Yeah,
not
I'm sure it's not top of the list. I understand.
Yeah. Kevin wrote together a status. I'll dig that out because he wrote together the current priorities page.
Oh, I think I saw that actually. Yeah.
I'll post that in because it's worth highlighting.
So, secondly, will they accept cross-platform improvements? Is that on the radar, or are we still really going to keep that on F#?
I mean,
when you talk about the diff, that sounds like maybe trying to make them eventually the same.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, ideally, that would be the same. I mean, I think the Visual F# team are gradually feeling their way through that, and they, in particular, when they go to GitHub, it would be much easier to enable cross-platform testing with Travis, for example. Yeah. Their big problem is they can't test cross-platform easily. It's not set up to do that at Microsoft, as you could well imagine. I mean, they could do it, but it's also not sort of their job. In some sense, it's the job of the core engineering group to do that. So getting the repositories together it would be good, but that really has to be on GitHub, which has all the great support for app hooks and for Travis and everything else. Yeah. But aligning the two to at least make development possible cross-platform, so you can build the thing on. I mean, we could do that. We could start pushing those diffs back across now. Yeah. Okay, so I'll write that into the doc as to sort of to track this over time. So this is on current pain points for compiler. Interesting. So I mean, this is I think things are developed here. I'll add in some extra notes to say sort of we aim to enable development on the compiler. When this doc was written first time around, we weren't really even accepting open contributions to F#, the core language and compiler library. So I'll just add that into the doc here. We aim to enable development, facilitate cross-platform, especially by cross-platform users. So in cooperation with Visual F# team. So you'll see that blog post that was written about that. So aligning code bases with the Visual F# team repos. Yeah, thanks. Michael. Designing code bases. Performing cross-platform testing. Through just
One other thing I wanted to ask about, in general, I think like the current site for suggesting features and such for F#, the Microsoft site, is lacking in a lot of ways.
It's got user voice.
Yeah, I mean, especially the voting mechanism. If you have a lot of ideas, or even just a bunch of small things, you're incentivized to put large things and vote heavily for them instead of little things that might be
yeah.
to do.
Yeah. I do agree with that. There's about 130 ideas on that. I do farm them a little bit, and it's extremely useful. And it's also, compared to where we were a year ago, I think it's a huge improvement that there is a place where you can at least record these ideas. And when people come to me with good ideas, I now can point them saying, put it on the site and start a discussion and get people to vote for it and so on. So it's at least halfway there. Any suggestion on what we can do about that, Rick? I mean, you know, it's one of those things.
GitHub feature requests and such instead. I mean, they're not votable, I guess is the problem.
Yeah, votable, yeah.
But I'd rather be able to vote up and down on each one rather than put a certain amount of like 10 points across all of them, because it's sort of it's extremely limiting to only be able to vote on 10 things. And you can't say no. There's no downvote.
I just have to get the power pack for my laptop. All
right.
Might be mentioned in this document. I think we might have mentioned it in the document last year. Is that, I mean, there are other language communities we could go and look at. For instance, I mean, the one I'm most familiar with is kind of the Python PEP process, where people can propose changes to the library, and they actually have a workflow of how that goes through, and you know, depending how invasive it is, how sort of onerous the process is to get. I mean, it doesn't have kind of quite the big number on the left, this many people have voted for it kind of thing. But on the other hand, what it does allow, which I think is one of the problems that you were mentioning, Rick, is a bit of a distinction between really big core changes that people can flag up and say, no, we need to think about this, as opposed to really small, nice enhancements where if someone sends a pull request, a kind of way of getting that pushed through. So I'm not saying we should necessarily just sort of lift their process wholesale, but I think genuinely where other languages are doing it better than we are at the moment, and possibly we could use that as inspiration to move forward. But yeah, I'm totally with you on where we were a year ago.
I mean, something like Hacker News, but without the like disappearing nature of things, or that they could be marked as like never going to happen, or promoted to some like list. I think that would be more ideal. I know it's like not free. Maybe there is like a piece of software that another language community is using for that we could just lift or slightly modify. That's always the nicest when you don't have to do the work.
I like the idea of having everything in one place. I like your idea of just using GitHub for that, Rick. You can still curate the list to some extent, although I agree that the voting is a nice to have. You can also just have a repository that's just for issues. It doesn't have to be your actual code repository. So you can have discussion there and then migrate it across if you want, if it's accepted.
Yeah, it's it's tricky. I have to. I'm reason as a curator, I guess, and for the I'm reasonably happy with fslang.user voice at least as a starting point. It gets me the information I need. It gives me a place to record things. It makes I don't have, as you probably can tell, I don't necessarily have time to go to great length in discussions on language features. It's a fairly F# is a highly stable language. We've been through the loop for 3 or 4 times on the language design, probably 6 or 7 if you include the 1.x versions. And yeah, so for the core language, I'm kind of pretty. The process doesn't have to be too involved. I'd imagine a lot of the Python PEP stuff. I was just looking through the list, wondering how many are actually to do with Python itself, and how many range onto other parts of the library space, which doesn't really come under the F# language design kind of remit, or even F#.core, things that are now in NuGet packages, .NET framework.
I was more along the lines of like the recent additions to the core library. It would be nice if those were like being drawn from something, because there's a lot of things the core library could use, and what's being added seems sort of arbitrary.
Well, what's being added is not too arbitrary. We're completing the matrix, but that's all that's been scheduled to be added, and plus the addition of a couple of functions. I think which aren't, I don't think, too arbitrary. But I think we're trying to shift away from people trying to shove stuff into the core library. Okay, we really don't want more stuff in that isn't completing the matrix between seek, list, and array is fine, but that we have to move to people producing NuGet packages that add on to the F# ecosystem, rather than expecting stuff to go into F#.core. Okay. So the default answer to anything in the core library is no. And the default answer to anything in the language is also more or less no. I mean, we are putting things into the language, but yet both of them have to be highly conservative points of addition, right? So the key thing is on packaging and NuGet and NuGet really. Or packages and the package ecosystem as a way for. Now then, there's a question of whether we start to have a more, and this came up a lot in the last year's discussion, was do we have a more formal process of managing the F# namespace? I think in the end, at the moment, we've landed to an informal, to these high quality libraries under F#. The sort of F#.data kind of space, and then a whole set of incubation projects under FS projects without a really tight namespace management process. So we talked for a while about requiring people to have experimental in names of packages until they're ready, but that hasn't sort of stuck. We definitely have things like F#.actor, but F#.actor is a great library, but in some sense it's still in flux, and so under previous, just to pick on one example, I don't know if Colin is on the call, but there's lots of other ones like that as well, which you wouldn't, that maybe should have an experimental tag or some sort of transitionary tag or something, but we didn't end up doing that. So fslang.user voice is sort of fine for that core language and library because it's a fairly conservative space anyway. How would the community want to manage a process for the upstack kind of things, like F#.data, for example? That just uses F#.data uses GitHub issues. The F# Power Tools uses its own user voice. I mean, we have a should these be starting to head towards one big kind of process, or one big, or is just using GitHub for each project one by one the right way to do things?
I think you should leave it to the library authors, the people doing the actual work.
Yeah.
You put all these rules on top of them, and it'll just increase productivity.
Yeah, that's a kind of place where we're at. Like people say, I don't know where to make a suggestion about F#, right? Or make and because it might actually be a suggestion about F#.data or something. But on the other hand, we are just letting individual contributors and projects choose between having a user voice or choosing GitHub issues, and they're the two ways. Yes. But it doesn't feel totally satisfactory. But. I guess concretely, well, to me both user voice and GitHub issues feel unsatisfactory. Okay, and so I wouldn't want to. One option would be to, for instance, open up the fslang.uservoice.com to be sort of fsharp.uservoice.com, which you could and all the projects could have an entry under there, and we would end up with 50 projects. But if uservoice isn't seen to be a great site anyway, then we shouldn't head in that direction.
We did talk last year about. If I remember correctly, about potentially making because we don't want to extend core, making a set of blessed packages that sort of make a extended core, just kind of standard for F#.
Yeah. I think that is. So let's just jot down a few notes on what we're talking about. So this is on the core engineering doc. I guess this would come under. The general, I'll put a couple of comments here just so we capture that discussion. So on the core compiler core service, I'll say a pain point is fslang.uservoice.com is not a great place for making language suggestions. And the general criticism of there are too many places to make suggestions. Roughly speaking, fslang.uservoice. There's Visual F# Power Tools. I think there's a Visual Studio.uservoice.com. A blog entry about that, I think. F#.org has some details on that. So make a suggestion. Fix an issue. That's that site there. This one here. Okay, so now then, Rick, you were saying on the libraries and packages side of things. So the current situation with sort of batteries included kind of things seems to be the thing I like best personally is the kind of FSLab approach, where you take a particular usage domain for F#, like data science, and you make a consistent set of packages for that particular domain. I don't really like the idea of a general purpose batteries included, because I just don't think it's possible to have a batteries included that works for both mobile programming and data science programming, for example. Rick, do you agree with that?
I don't know. I mean, they do it with Python, like WinPython distribution. It comes with a package manager, but it also comes with a whole bunch of precompiled, blessed packages. And people tend to kind of sort of crowd around those packages, and they're sort of become a standard across different frameworks. So like, the kind of work we do is often very large in scope. A lot of it is data munging, some of it is algorithms. And I need things from all of these places, but I've been very hesitant to do more than essentially cut and paste code or put things in a secondary, like not pull in NuGet packages, because first of all, like nothing is blessed, so it's hard to explain upwards. And secondly, it all seems like I can't guarantee that these will be managed in perpetuity, because they're not part of like some sort of core set of things that the community has sort of agreed that we will push forward into the future.
Yeah.
Does that make sense at all?
Kind of does, although from my brief experience of the Python world, I would say that even having a kind of its libraries didn't stop some of them getting really very out of date and very much the wrong tool for the job. So but then a lot of people carried on using them because the libraries, I mean, sort of the URL and HTTP libraries in Python were the classic example. So it does cut a bit both ways. I don't think you're having a list of the official projects.
But Rick, I do take your point that these tools like Python and R obviously get a long way by having blessed packages. And I think FS Lab should be a collection of blessed packages, right? That it should play that role for the data science kind of work that you do. So yeah, I think I'd recommend us getting behind that and make, at least in that domain, make that really work. I mean, .NET, of course, is our other set of blessed packages, the .NET Core framework.
But a lot of that's really painful from F#. There's better alternatives out there already in a lot of cases.
Not necessarily. Not for I don't know a better networking library than the .NET library for. I mean, it makes some things harder than they should be, but I don't know. So you can kind of simplify a few things with F# wrappers on top of it, but I don't fundamentally think there's a F# networking library that's better than the .NET one. Or a globalized Unicode conversion library or whatever else that's in .NET. Quite a lot of the other things. Yeah. I think I think it's just going to be very hard to have a blessed package ecosystem for F# that works across all the domains where F# gets used. That works, for instance, on Xamarin and iOS, and in data science, I think it can work, and even for mobile programming, it can work, or some other mobile app programming, it's possible. But I think
the real crux, like the real sort of rub, because like you can't leave open generics and such or something like that. A lot of limitations.
So on the mobile platforms?
Yeah.
Right. There are compilation requirements on iOS and Android which are going to get in the road for some packages, and you can't do runtime code gen, for example, and some data science. You can do some great data science libraries if you can do runtime code generation. Yeah, and Python, of course, I mean, has trouble getting onto those mobile devices, partly because of that blessed package ecosystem. You can't get NumPy onto an iPhone, right? Well, not as far as I know. Yeah, Apple will announce it tomorrow. But... Okay. So I would really encourage people to get on board with FS Lab, and I mean, Thomas is a busy guy. Thomas and Matthias are obviously key drivers in that. But I think the core idea of having a set of packages and templates or tooling and everything else for data science is an absolutely great one. Yeah, and it'd be really good if there are other people helping them drive that to I guess release. I mean, everything that Thomas demonstrates is fantastic in that domain. But it's not. They haven't taken it out of sort of private beta yet, although you can get it obviously on NuGet, but it's not documented and the like. So I do think that's really would unlock a lot of what you want, Rick, of a core basis for F# data science programming that you can really trust and give it one label.
Definitely it'd help. I mean, there is the problem of the Microsoft community in the box approach. It makes F# shine less. Those libraries. That's all. I mean, it would be nice even if it was just like a box of wrappers.
So you mean that there'd be a richer set of wrappers in the box in F#? So sort of like, for instance, a wget function or something to allow you to get a web page easily.
Yeah, maybe just even transform APIs to be properly curried, so that you can, or like making it easier to pass around the thing that needs to be disposed of, as opposed to like some giant monolithic thing. A lot of the problems I've seen with F# and the C# libraries come with there's unmanaged resources because of the way that people tend to build these giant trees of classes in C#. It doesn't really translate that well to F#.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, yes, the Microsoft F# distribution or the mono F# distribution doesn't come with any kind of like little libraries of wrappers to make your life easier outside F#.core, so stuff that sits on the networking libraries and other places. I haven't seen a really convincing proposal for what that would be. Okay, I haven't. I went over all of the batteries included libraries, F#X and others, looking at what we could put into F#.core, and we're mostly looking for very core stuff, but we didn't find that much stuff which felt like it really had to go in the core. And nor did I kind of get a picture of. I think there's room for like an F# scripting library. That NuGet package would be my ideal. I think a key thing is to make it easier to add NuGet packages to F# scripts, and I think that's something the Visual Studio and Xamarin tooling needs to do. So you can just like right-click, add NuGet package, you get the same dialogues and so on in the common tools. But that, yeah, or you could type it into Emacs, just a one-line sort of packet command if it ends up being packet. That would, and then I think I'd like to see some sort of high-quality kind of make it easy to do scripting libraries coming out of the community. But I haven't seen anything that really grabs me as a coherent set of non-ad hoc kind of set of F# kind of functions to improve the .NET libraries for networking, for example. So yeah.
One simple thing that I was thinking, like, really deserves a .NET wrapper are the new immutable collections. For example, we're getting all these immutable collections, and they're going to have a non-F# API, which is going to be really weird. But they're probably going to be better performance-wise than a lot of the stuff in the box. You know, like map, for example, in F# is pretty darn slow.
Yep.
So, I mean, if there was going to be a project like this, it need to start small. I mean, that'd be
So someone should definitely consider doing an immutable collections.f# that has a dependency on immutable collections and does what you say, makes it entirely idiomatic to transition code from F# code into immutable F# map into immutable collections map or something. I think that'd be great. Okay, I'll write that one out.
I'd just like to say that, so on the topic of like blessed libraries, this one is a good example of something that could be really good in that space. When I was having a look around at the various like extra libraries of like purely functional data structures and this kind of thing that are on GitHub, but I couldn't really get a good handle on how mature they were, or if I was going to choose one, which one I would go for. Because when I'm going to pull down some new data structures into my project, I just want to be able to rely on them and not worry about whether it's not optimal or the implementation, I mean. So that's one area where I could see some kind of official message being useful.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, I'm aware I need to actually go relatively soon, which might actually stop the broadcast. I hadn't fully realised that. I think it's Maya camming it rather than it going out as a shared thing. But I mean, I got the impression that this idea of the blessed libraries, this was partly the idea of the sort of FS projects and GitHub projects, that you could kind of have a library that was generally accepted was part of the sort of things that people had looked at and thought were okay. And I think, I mean, I correct me if I'm wrong, the people who were around last year, but I think there was a general consensus that that was probably going to be more affect namespace guidelines on people, partly because practically we just can't, and partly because if there is a library that you're using before it gets blessed and then it gets moved, you don't suddenly want to have to sort of reference all your code because all the namespaces have changed. I mean, do people think that's working? Do libraries are sort of in those projects, or I mean, the one thing I was noticing is that it's not actually very clear when you're looking in NuGet from the metadata that those projects have come from those places, because obviously just because it's in that GitHub project doesn't mean that it's published to NuGet under sort of the F# thing like that. I mean, is it working? Is there anything we could change that would make it easier for people to spot them? Do we think that they're actually higher quality libraries anyway?
You could centralize the naming, take the Microsoft approach.
So it'd be much more strict over the use of the F# namespace, for example.
Yeah, so you apply for a namespace. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think when I stop and think about it, the F# namespace is getting a bit out of hand, right? And it could do with cleanup. Absolutely, I'm sure if you search in NuGet for the word F#, you'll see a whole lot of packages of a lot of variable quality, and there's no real way out of that except to reclaim the space as a where you can put logos on it to indicate that it's from a more reputable source, or you can, but yeah, there's no real way out of it except just to reclaim the namespace.
I mean, certainly the namespace is one good way of giving an indication that this package, you can trust this package to some basic level.
Should there be a voting mechanism for the packages? And then
I mean, NuGet shows the NuGet shows the total number of downloads, which is a good first approximation to whether the thing's any good or not. But I see a package like F#.dynamic, okay, by Jay, who I know from Twitter, and I don't know if it's any good or not, right? There's also other dimensions which matter as well, like does it have if it can be made into a portable library, is it actually a portable library? And that's becoming more and more important. I should mention as a positive on this discussion that the PCL support for F# across the board is vastly improved in the year that we've talked about, which enables us to to start worrying about things like namespaces and because
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, yes, it is a good problem to have. It's not a we haven't got a lack of F#. When I'm searching, we have 263 packages coming up under F# on NuGet now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a sign of progress.
Yes, and there's some things hidden away.
Sorry, right.
Sorry, so someone wanted to say something?
Just going to say, I think Ryan is trying not to interrupt, and is ever quicker if he says things himself. I'm not sure if he's mic'd up or if he wants me to read out what he said.
So I was typing towards Michael about the namespace issue, and that a lot of people who are new to F# that want to put out a package are likely to use F#. So it'd probably be good to prefix the namespace so that people know, like, something like org.f# or perfect.f# or magic or progressive.f# or something might be the thing to look for, so that they know that it's better than, or maybe even better.f# is a better namespace to look for approved packages or something.
I quite like your suggestion of FSF, which is something that we could at least claim to have some ownership over.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a lot of work. And the other thing is, people, once you make the FSSF namespace, they'll just start occupying that too, right?
Yeah, if you change all my namespaces, I'll murder you.
I mean, yeah, exactly. One of the problems, of course, is it's a spectrum of quality. We wouldn't organizationally even know what to put under the FSSF namespace, right? Where do you draw the line in quality, right? That's not an easy. I mean, we talked about that a fair bit last year as well. Yeah, I mean, part of the process is just evicting old stuff. There's an fsharp.com provider here, com type provider. There's probably it's not the right name for it. It probably shouldn't be in that namespace, and maybe it's old. I don't know. But it's possible that should be evicted, right? I don't know. I think you can generally just get in touch with the package owner and say, could you hide this thing? Could you rename it? Could you? So it is possible to clean up the space, but it does take a bit of time and effort. It's something we need to do deliberately. I mean, fsharp.enterprise. Enterprise Library Collection. It's probably extremely useful, but this business of occupying 2-word namespaces, like to occupy the entire enterprise space under the F# namespace, that doesn't feel right. F#.reactive is the same thing. It's just shouldn't be. It's two words. It shouldn't be F#.implicit. F#.azure, for example. Azure is a big thing, right? It should be F#. Just if we stop people using 2-word names, that will go a long way to help things.
More accurate and meaningful.
Yeah, they have to be at least 3 words. It's this F#. When I look at these things, it's okay to have F#.data.SQL enum provider. That at least gives scope for more additions under F#.data. But the 2-word names are really a big problem. Right. Okay. So where Michael's going to have to go soon. So, Michael, is there other things specifically you wanted to cover before you?
Yeah, I suppose the one thing I'd like to sort of get before I log off, again, so, Ryan was just saying that apparently when I log out it will stop broadcasting, but the rest of you will be left sort of able to carry on the conversation. But the one on the public record is when do we plan to do this next? Because I'm aware that sort of myself and Dave let it slide for quite a while after things kicked off, and it's probably just slightly more often. I mean, are we sort of talking 6 monthly or annually? What do people?
I'd recommend 3 months. What do people think?
Sounds good to me.
We think 3 months sounds good.
Okay. So fair enough. I will try and get something organised next time and try and get something on from there. But anyway, as I said, I think the rest of you will be able to carry on chatting, but I'm going to say goodnight at this point
Okay, Michael, thanks
in my
very much.
time zone, and see you again in a few months' time.
Good.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Michael, see you. Good stuff.